Hey guys, hope you are doing amazing. This is a question that many people pose to me all the time, and I understand why it's so important. Because if you're going to get into rent-to-rent or serviced accommodation, most likely you are going to work with an estate agent, a landlord, or a developer. But right now I want to focus on working with an estate agent. Now, if you're going to work with an estate agent, it means you're going to have to pass referencing. To give you a better understanding, one of the reasons that estate agents make sure you pass referencing is to make sure you qualify to take on the property. They have a responsibility to their landlord to make sure the person that's renting their property is a suitable candidate and is likely to pay the rent and therefore not default on paying the rent. If you want to take on a property, you've got to be prepared to pass referencing. So I'm going to explain the 4 different types of ways in which you can acquire a property through referencing. So the first way is the most typical way. The first way would be you have a job, which therefore means you have an income or you have salary, and therefore you have pay slips, and you're able to provide this information to the estate agent, who would then pass it on to a referencing company. They would do the referencing. They would ask you a number of questions. They would ask you for a landlord reference. They would ask you for pay slips. They would ask you for your employment, just to make sure that you qualify to rent the property and you pass affordability. That's the most typical way for you to pass referencing. Now, the second way is if you're working with an estate agent and you're looking to take on the property in your company name, then many estate agents will ask you for 2 or 3 years of accounts. They want to make sure that the company is credible. Similar to how they would do a referencing on an individual, in this case, they would do referencing on the company. They can check the credit score of the company. They can check the health of the company. They can check the company to see whether the company is credible. Number 3, you don't have a salary and you don't have a business that's filed accounts. It doesn't mean you can't get into service accommodation. It might just mean you might need to get a guarantor. Now, in many cases, a guarantor has the pros and cons. The guarantor means you can actually take on a property because somebody else is guaranteeing that if you don't pay the rent, they will pay the rent on your behalf. That's the positive. The negative is it's got to be someone that you trust and someone that trusts you, because it simply means they are liable in case you don't pay the rent. Referencing process for a guarantor isn't actually difficult. It's really quite simple. It just adds one extra step, which means the guarantor now has to be referenced, which means the referencing agency or the estate agent needs to find out from your guarantor what their income is. They've got to demonstrate and show that, but more importantly, they've got to be earning significantly more, because as part of the referencing, they've got to show that they can also pay for their standard of living, aka their bills, their cars, transportation. Essentially, if you don't pay your rent, they've got enough money to also pay your rent. And then the last way, and this is proven quite popular, especially when you are brand new, if you don't have a guarantor, if you don't have an income, if you don't have a company that's filed accounts, then you might just have to go down this route, which means you work with an estate agent in the sense of you pay either 3 or 6 months rent up front. Of course, there are benefits and there are also disadvantages to this. Benefit would simply mean most estate agents would be happy to take 3 or 6 month rent up front from you, because it reduces the liability. It means they know that they have got rent for their client, for their landlord, for the foreseeable future. Now, on your side, it might be a little bit more difficult, because it means it messes up your cash flow because you've had to put 3 or 6 months rent down. But the benefit here is, regardless, is you have to pay your rent regardless. So it means you're just paying your rent up front and you don't have to worry about rent for the next 3 to 6 months. I hope that was helpful, guys. If you got some value, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And in fact, do me a favor, share this with someone else who wants to get into property.